Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Those who are listening for the first time, I'm Rob Nuttleman. I'm an employment attorney, public speaker, and mediator. And we talk at Relate Humanly, talk about human relations issues. How do we get along with one another? Communication issues, organizational, workplace issues. Today we got a special guest. I'm excited. She's a wonderful woman. Cynthia Maria Estalilia is the founder and owner of CME Beyond Career Success. She has more than 30 years experience working across a wide variety of small, mid, global organizations. She works in the financial services industry, apparel, hospitality, technology, a lot of talent consulting. Great background with human resources and client service management and career services. She's pivoted her career several years ago and is focusing on career coaching and consulting and career management. We go into that in a little bit of detail and talk about her path to get there and some of the different things that people can do today to prepare for that career pivot that may come in the future, whether it's one that we're expecting, something we want, or something that may be hoisted upon us. So enjoy my conversation with Cynthia Maria Estalilia. Cynthia, welcome. It is so great to see you. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm well, Rob. So great to see you too. I'm so glad, and thank you for having me. This is great.
Oh, I mean, the pleasure's mine. Interacting with you, I really enjoyed some of the things that you said and some of the things you've talked about. I thought I got to get her on the podcast. You've got such an interesting background with human resources and with career services and this disc styles, communications consultant. How did you get to where you are today?
Oh my gosh, Rob. You know, it's really funny. I feel like I'm a complex person, but then now that I realize it, it really all fell into play. So I'm a career coaching consultant, and I am also a career management strategist. And pulling that all together was throughout the course of my career. I started in HR. First of all, my entire career was in San Francisco. I was born and raised in San Francisco up until 2 years ago when I started moving to the East Bay. But anyway, in terms of my background, I started in HR in the hospitality industry.
Well, that's a difficult area to be in doing HR. We've got so many between management, clients, employees. It's a lot going on there.
Absolutely, and I have the highest respect for the leaders who, coached me and who I reported to at the time. And I also moved into, kind of a combination of the generalist support role as well as recruitment support. I worked for Levi Strauss & Company.
Oh, wow.
In their corporate recruiting team, with their corporate recruiting team. And then I moved into, for a short stint, I actually jumped into the .com phase where somebody actually recruited me to work for a global tech consulting company for a short time. And then the best part of it, I think, is I did end up with a great career at Wells Fargo. And
Nice.
Wells Fargo in the wealth management space. I was almost at 20 years, up to 2023. Where I was a client service manager for a national client service team. So Rob, pulling that all together, my HR experience, my client service experience, my love for coaching, because I was on both sides throughout my career, right? On the HR side, I was, obviously helping employees, but then on the client service side, I had a team. I had a large.
It's always interesting on the HR side because many people perceive HR differently. Some think, oh, they're just for the company, or they're just for the employee. And really, it's that fine line that you have to walk of doing both sides. And it sounds like all these different positions have some things in common, including communication skills. Seems to be a major factor in what you've worked on.
Oh, huge, huge. And when you think about the stakeholders, so that's probably the best way for me to describe how all those pieces pull together, because you're right, HR our stakeholders, right, are, the employees,
Mm-hmm.
but also the people, our peers, right? The people who, is in that position where we are giving advice, right? We
Mm-hmm.
are helping to stay compliant,
Yeah.
right? That's the big component, right? But then it's on both sides,
Yeah.
right? It's listening to the employees, but also listening to our peers and our leaders, the
Mm-hmm.
people who we have the biggest accountability to, right?
Yeah.
And so taking all those pieces, or I should say stakeholders in mind, as well as my background, the reason why I describe it as, I kind of describe it as, when you think about it, Rob, sitting on all sides of the table,
Okay.
right?
Explain that.
Because from the HR perspective, that's the guidance, that's the coaching, that's our accountability to make sure we are servicing our clients, right?
Okay.
Whomever they are, right? And at the same time, making sure we are meeting our goals. We are reaching out to our leaders to understand what is necessary for us to move forward and to be
Mm-hmm.
successful. But that's both from the leadership side as well as the employee side, right?
Gotcha.
It works both ways.
Yeah, and I'm picturing like these cogs moving together, and you kind of, to some degree, being the oil that helps them mesh correctly together, but also the person who's kind of there or part of the team helping people just understand their roles and how do we get along to so that we can all do what we're here to do, which is ultimately serve our client or make our products or whatever is the goal of the company and hopefully its employees.
Absolutely. And so when I pull that together, Rob, while I was at Wells Fargo, I was still employed there when I started my own business.
Oh,
So
okay.
I started my business in 2020 during the height of the pandemic. And people
Oh,
thought I was crazy.
right?
So, so it was a side business that was supported by my company. As a matter of fact, it was an interesting conversation because I had heard and read that during that time, women in their mid 50s were starting businesses. And that was a big thing. I thought, wow, I was reading about it, hearing about
Mm-hmm.
it, and then I thought, Rob, what would I do to start a business? And I started thinking, well, I don't cook very well, so that ain't gonna go well. And so I punted that to one of my colleagues, and they said, Cynthia, you're really good at managing people.
Mm-hmm.
You have been great at coaching and developing your team, your past and present. And why wouldn't you do something in that space?
Sure.
And so pulling together my HR experience, my client service experience, and of course my career, I developed my career services, my acumen, my certifications. I started just loading up on upskilling
Mm-hmm.
before I started my business. And, opened it up in 2020, and I celebrated 5 years last year.
Well, congratulations. And that's interesting. I mean, to make that kind of a pivot in your career at 50 or in your 50s it's difficult. And, I'm an employment attorney, so I work with employers and employees, and I do see people who are leaving their jobs later in their lives, whether sometimes not by their own choice, sometimes by their own choice. And I'm always curious as to how do you make that pivot? Like, you said you had a friend who told or a colleague said, "Hey, you're a really good communicator. You're good at directing people." Tell me a little bit more about how that career pivot happened for you.
Oh, Rob, so there are two different ways that I can tell you about that. First of all, as we both know in HR, we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, let's be honest, right? And so I myself had been laid off 3 times in my career. And so I know what that feels like. So again, when I talk about being on different sides of the table, I had to lay myself off one time. And I do know personally, emotionally, professionally, what does that do to you?
Yeah.
And that really, really gave me that extra push to start that business.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to make sure, I'm in my mid 50s, right? You described it perfectly. I don't know, although I was fortunate to continue working for Wells Fargo at the time, I didn't know what could happen. No
Yeah.
one knows, right? And it was a time that just so much change was going on, right? Pivot was, something that people weren't ready for,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And
and I mean, one of the things you do in your business now is that career pivoting. Were you helping other people with that same adjustment?
absolutely, that was the birth of what I call career pivot readiness.
Tell me about that. What does career pivot readiness mean?
Yeah, so career pivot readiness is being ready not just for that next role, but for your entire career, regardless of what that transition currently looks like. So to your point, my biggest audience, I guess, are those who have been laid off,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who's lost their job at no fault of their own.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also people who, are at the stage in their career wherever that is, right, where they want something new. They want to change their careers, right? They're like tired of being maybe in that industry or tired of that particular role and not want to do something different. Right?
Or maybe even those who are kind of planning, and we're seeing some large technological evolutions, artificial intelligence, large language models being one of them. And so we are seeing a lot of different industries being impacted by that. Are there some ways that people should be thinking now on, okay, I may be losing my job in the future, or I can see where my job is going to be changing significantly in a way that I don't want to do it, and so I should be what are we doing now to pivot for in the future if we can have that foresight?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things I say right now, because my biggest audience are mid-career and late career professionals. It's like gather all of your accomplishments, document them, make sure you look back in your career and highlight what business impact did you make in each of your roles.
Okay, so looking back, highlighting your career, look at your goals, look at your accomplishments, and make sure those are organized, identifiable.
Absolutely.
Okay, and what's the other?
Absolutely. Right. And the other one is make sure that you are reconnecting with your networks, building new networks, cultivating your networks, because you don't want to be at that point, which most of us end up, where all of a sudden you do lose your job and you're thinking, who do I reach out to?
Mm-hmm.
Create, build, cultivate your networks now.
So don't wait until they're saying this is the end to start working and building that network, building out your LinkedIn or X or whatever social media, but also those personal, in person, Zoom, whatever they are, one-to-one touchstones.
Absolutely. And make sure people know who you are, what's important to you, and how your career has gone or where you're hoping it will go. It will just make it so much easier and more fulfilling when you do have some type of transition, because now people know who you are without you having to reintroduce yourself all over again.
Do you ever work with people who have difficulty in that networking part? I know some people, they don't like to go out, they don't like to pick up the phone and call, they don't want to let people know that, hey, I may have a need. What's your experience with that?
Oh my gosh, that's the biggest thing. Nobody likes to network. When I talk about networking, everybody cringes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So two particular programs I have. One is the Career Pivot Readiness Program. So that takes in consideration everything. You're building your resume, having a strong LinkedIn, developing your job search strategy, and developing your networking strategy. That is a whole full-blown program. But I also talk a lot about strategic networking. That's becoming a really popular topic that I've been talking to a lot of organizations about. And it's because a lot of people are uncomfortable doing the reach outs, right? And that's why I emphasize, right? One, everyone should network. And two, if there are goals or a role or a company that you're specifically wanting to target, start being strategic of how you get to know people at those companies.
We could spend hours on this because years ago I had a business coach and he was talking about going out and networking, and I had this mental block. I didn't want to go out there. I felt like, I just, I'm an attorney and I don't want to feel like I'm begging people. And we had this conversation. He's like, Rob, you're just going to go out and have conversations with people. I mean, you go out and hang out with friends, right? And you guys talk and, you enjoy those things. You go to bar association things and you talk to people. You're doing the same thing. You're just oftentimes adding some intentionality behind it. And
Absolutely.
that shift from taking of like, I have to go out and like beg you for business, which is not what networking is. And came up with all sorts of different tools for kind of changing my own internal monologue about that. So that's wonderful. You mentioned one of the things you do is disc styles communication. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, the DISC style, so what that is it's an assessment that I administer, and I actually got a chance to experience that both when I worked for in corporate America, of course, and then as I started my business. And basically what that is it's an assessment that helps identify how you perceive your work environment. Okay. How do you relate to people? How do you influence people? How do you relate? How do you perceive projects and the pace of work? Right? And those are all described in the DISC. So it's called the DISC assessment. And what's interesting about that, especially when career services professionals like myself use that, it's an opportunity for example, Rob, if you were to take one today, I can get a snapshot of what are your strengths, right? By a few questions that you answer, right? And how are you perceiving your current work environment?
Okay.
Right? And how does that compare to who is Rob naturally? How does Rob naturally act, to his friends and family, his own current networks, right? And seeing if there is synergy or if there's a disconnect. And when there's a disconnect, that could be stress. Maybe you are in an environment that's not working for you.
So you're assessing how I'm interacting in my environment today and how I'm moving, perceiving, motivating, and also how I perceive myself outside that context. And if there's a disconnect between those two, that can cause the stress, that can raise the anxiety, make things more difficult. And then do you work with the clients to help them mirror those or blend them together or just find a different career? I was like, okay, you're done with that one.
You actually hit it right at the tail end there where we start talking about career clarity. Is this where you should be? Right? Let's look at your strengths. Are your strengths aligned with what really motivates you?
Do you have people...
And let's start looking at different roles.
Do you have people that are afraid to come up with them? That if I spend 10, 15, 20, 30 years in a career and there's a risk that you might tell me I'm in the wrong career, that can create that fear of, what's next? Now what do I do? Do we have solutions?
Yes, absolutely. So this is where both my HR experience and my career services come into play, right? So first of all, it's not necessarily saying that, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be in that career, okay? How many times do we change careers in the course of our lifetime? And it'll probably be even more now that we have technological advances of moving at the speed of light with AI, right?
Yeah.
So what this does is we have a conversation of saying, what, do you still feel good in that career, right? We kind of talk through that. And also for me to validate that it's okay to change. It's okay, right? That just basically means you had a fabulous career in that, whatever that, was prior, right? We all change careers a few times throughout our lifetime. And maybe there are one of two things you might want to consider. One, looking at other careers and what's in demand. Because we have to look at what's in demand, not just throw, something out of a hat and going, hey, I think I want to be and it's not in demand. So we got to look at that, number one. And then number two, if there are slight adjustments to how you perceive your current environment. Let's talk about that. Right? What could help that could pull out more of your strengths and minimize the, I guess, the stress or maybe the pieces that you're not excited about with your job. And that coincides with what you're talking about with regards to communication. Maybe it becomes a communication piece that you have with um, your leader, your peers. If you're on a project team, your project team, because you need their buy-in, right?
Yeah.
So it could be some adjustments there.
Yeah, a lot of the conversations I have, both again on management side and the employee side, is that effective communication. We all go through our lives. We've got goals. We've got things we want to do. Sometimes we're not even aware what they are. So I like the idea of let's take that step back and kind of figure out where we are, where do we want to be, so that we can then plan a path to get there. Whether that's in the existing role, existing company, I want to become a pro wrestler, whatever it happens to be, so that I can have that harmony, right? At the end of the day, isn't that what we're really looking for? Is that I want to be at harmony with those I'm in relationship with, and that includes those people I'm working with.
Absolutely.
So you have a speaker series, a Cynthia Speak series. What's that?
So Rob, all of my services, I can honestly tell you, were at the inspiration of my clients. So I add things as my clients say, Cynthia, you should do that. Cynthia, you should do that. So I started doing a lot of speaking over the course of when I started my business, and I never really thought of formalizing it until recently. So my speaker series is, of course, one, to talk about my career readiness program, what it is. I've already started doing some speaking on that, and the program that I put together for that, how important it is to think about not just that next job, but your entire career. And then the other one that's popular, as I mentioned earlier, is strategic networking. And then a couple of new ones that I'm building out, which is personal branding, right? Really understand who you are, right? It starts with you, right? And that from an individual perspective, but also from a small business perspective.
I was going to say small business in particular. I'm an employment attorney, a public speaker, a mediator, but that personal branding, I have no experience with like, how do I brand myself? How do I, label myself, or what do I need to do? So I really see that as integral, particularly for the smaller businesses. But even the mid-sized businesses, I mean, how many businesses out there really are struggling with who their brand is? And you bring, experience. You've had some global clients, I'm sure, at Wells Fargo and other places. You've had contact with small, medium, and large size organizations. That's kind of ideal.
Absolutely. And I've been very transparent on LinkedIn that I rebranded my business twice, right? Because I had to revisit. I had to make sure, am I addressing my clients, my target audience with what they need? And like I said, just like you change your careers, you're going to pivot, your position with your own business. Right? But my personal branding for small businesses really focuses on not only the individual, but if I'm working for you, Rob, for example, right? I better absorb what you do. I better be proud of what you do. I better be wanting to be that person who wants to advocate for Rob, right? And in order to do that, first of all, I have to ask myself, well, why am I working with Rob to begin with? Right? It's like, if I can't even answer that question, right? Should I be working with Rob? Right? Should I be working with Cynthia?
I think most people who work for me probably say no, but that's, beside, no. But I know, I once heard it said that our employees should be our cheerleaders. They should be so excited about working for us that they're going out and making it. That's that enthusiasm, that excitement, that joie de vivre, or joie d'employment. I don't know whatever. It's infectious, and that's really what's going to build not only your business but a strong team.
Absolutely, because if you don't, I remember where is it I heard, if you don't take care of your employees, we hear that a lot, right? Your employees, let's be honest, Rob, can make or break you.
Yep. And many people don't realize that. I mean, many companies, they think it's their product. Their customers are absolutely important, as are their employees. If we don't have that harmony or at least workability within the workplace, then the wheels are going to come off. So, Cynthia, what's the best way to get a hold of you? What websites, LinkedIn? Where are we looking for you?
Oh gosh, all of the above. So the biggest platform is LinkedIn, right? Again, I'm Cynthia Maria Estalilia, which is why my company's named CME
Oh,
Beyond
okay.
Career Success. That's where it came from. Okay. My website is www.cmebeyondcareers.com.
CMEBeyondCareers.com.
Careers.com.
Got it. Okay.
And then my email is cynthia@cmebeyondcareers.com.
Oh, it has been such a treasure and a pleasure to have you, Cynthia. I'm so grateful that I get to interact with you on a frequent basis. Thank you for coming out today.
Thank you. It was actually my honor and my privilege to work with you, Rob. And you know what? We are partners and, going forward.
Thank you for coming on. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. See you soon.
Thanks.